Hello. In this clip from our Justia webinar, Lynn Garson, attorney and mental health advocate, discusses how to address stress in ourselves and other people, and shares useful tools that will help us deal with stress. If you want to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure you're subscribed to our channel.
So, addressing stress in law practice, first in ourselves. This is the second most important slide because this has taken me forever to really break down, but I think I've got it pretty well broken down now, and it's breaking the habits. You know, it's a funny thing. Even addiction, the reason they call it a habit, somebody's got a habit, is while it doesn't sound serious enough, a lot of these things are habits. We do them over and over and over. We've created neural pathways. The grooves are pretty deep after we do it over and over for years, if not decades. But they're habits. They can be broken. What does it take? Work. So here's the whole list of step by step. First is awareness. I mean, you know this. You cannot correct something unless you know what's wrong. So where am I on the well-being continuum? And until recently, I trotted that out and I skipped on to the next step. And somebody pointed out to me, and I said it before, it's not a no-brainer to many, many people to figure out where they are on that continuum. You might need to sit down and really think about it, really do an inventory, get some help to figure it out, to start to understand how you work on the inside. Because a lot of attorneys are not used to thinking that way. We focus on others, we focus on the practice. All of this sounds a little bit woo-woo. We're not necessarily interested in that. There are many who are, but there are some who aren't. And I'm telling you that to break these habits, you are going to have to learn yourself in many ways. The next step is acceptance. So you may be aware of where you are, and you might even be sliding towards the middle of the spectrum. Maybe you're having panic attacks. But you can say to yourself, no, that's not a panic attack. I've got work to do. I'm going to ignore that. You can deny it all day long. This was a wonderful quote that I got at Shepherd Pratt. You can argue with reality and you will lose, but only 100% of the time. Great quote. I don't know how many words that is, but it says it all. So once you accept that you have an issue or that you are stressed to the point that maybe you should do something to address it, well, that's the next step. Prioritization. Okay, I've got an issue. Am I willing to do the work? Do I prioritize this? Do I prioritize it right now? Maybe I've got a big, transaction that's going to close in 3 months, and all I can see is getting to the end of that transaction. And no, I'm not willing to do the work right now. Okay, that's a choice. You will continue to be stressed out or whatever place you are on the spectrum for that whole period, but it is absolutely your choice whether you want to do this work or not. I will say, and you saw on that first slide, what my journey has been. I decided after I had recovered a fair amount of stability that my mental health is non-negotiable, and it is. I have more than once, and at least twice, I don't want to make it sound like 50 times, gone into the partner in charge of something and said, this is exactly what I said. I was shaking and crying on the way to work, and I know what that means for me, and I need to be taken off of X project. It was an extra project on top of everything else I was already doing, and they took me off of it. I mean, but the thing is, if I had not been taken off of it, I would have either figured out another way to do it, or I would have left, because my mental health is non-negotiable, 100%. I am never going back to where I've been. Self-discipline. So here is where the rubber meets the road. This is why I have a coach. because this is the thing that I have trouble doing. I know all of this. I'm willing to do the work. My mental health is not negotiable. But when I'm in the middle of drafting something, the idea of pushing the chair back every hour or whatever it is and getting up and walking around the block or going out in the sunshine, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. And I will continue to be stressed out to the extent I don't. And I know that. But like I said, it's a work in progress. I have gotten a lot better about it because I will tell you my own little personal story of recent stress. I got a project at 4:40 in the afternoon on July 3rd. Yes, you would be correct. That was the day before July 4th, the holiday. And it was, I don't know, something like 6 agreements and 4 amendments, each more intricate than the last. And the client wanted it back that day. And I went down the rabbit hole because this was the kind of work that required complete and utter concentration, only to find that some of the things that they had sent weren't correct. So after I'd done a couple of things, I had to go and undo them, and it had to undo them in other agreements as well. So by 7:30, I had electrical pulses in the back of my neck. I had a band that was pulsing right here. I almost pushed through, and I had a saving voice that said no. And I slammed my computer closed, my laptop. I happened to be where my ex-husband was, don't ask. I went and jumped into our little pool that we have at this house, this family house, and just to bring my electrical pulse level down because I was afraid I was going to have a stroke. And I almost went to the hospital, and I was not positive for the rest of the evening that I was okay. Turned out that I was, but you want to talk about a wake-up call. And I will tell you that it happened again on the Friday before Labor Day, and I said no. I said I finessed it. I didn't just say no, but I finessed it where I did not do the work. I did provide it by Tuesday morning, so I did work over the weekend, but I did not put myself into that maximally stressed state. I won't do it again. So it's another thing that I have learned. That was some self-discipline for me. I know it doesn't sound like much, like any fool would have done that, but it took some self-discipline. So I have a personal prevention plan. I have a maintenance plan. Talk a little more about that. And I just threw stigma in there because I throw it in all the time. Am I willing to ask for help if I need it? Because there are folks who feel the stigma in this area and feel that asking for help as a lawyer is going to make them look weak, or maybe they're not a partner yet and it's going to make their road to partnership more difficult. Your call, your choice. Like I said, I've written an article. I've got it down there, The Language of Asking for Help. I think you can be strategic about it. And just as a quick aside, part of what I talk about, just use the word burnout. Burnout is a badge of honor. Oh, you're burned out. Oh my gosh. You've really, given us your all. Sure. Take some time. Okay. I would use the word. Oh, here we go. Core issue for a lot of attorneys: overcoming perfectionism. Give yourself permission to be less than 100% effective. Is that even possible for some of us to do? It isn't for some, but I will tell you it needs to be, because there will never be a time that you don't suffer from stress, an inordinate amount of stress in the practice of law, if you do not come to grips and come to terms with this and work on it. So somebody told me that, well, yeah, but I'm a healthy perfectionist. I don't even know what that means. I wrote, this applies to you unless you're a healthy perfectionist. My guess is maybe 1%. My guess is 0%. I think I was just, feeling, like I would throw that in that day. So a couple of people, ways that they do this is they have these expressions, great is the enemy of good. Don't let perfection get in the way of good enough. That works for some people. If it works for you, take it and use it. Those don't work for me. Frankly, I don't, it just doesn't. That's not my approach. The next one is give yourself permission to be less than 100% effective by triaging. All issues and all tasks are not the same. They're not weighted the same. Set the bar high. If you've got a closing and you're working on the asset purchase agreement, that's an important document. The purchase price that you put in, that's an important number to get right. If I put 2 periods or missed a period somewhere, there are people that stress over that. It really causes an uptick in their stress level. And I used to be that way. I am here to tell you, it is not a blip on my screen anymore. It is almost an, oh, well, maybe not even that, because I work on getting the important things right. And if I get the really big ticket items right, I literally don't care about the other. I will slough off any stress that might have arisen from those things. So that's my way. But, there are other things to do. And on the next slide, I'm going to talk about even a coach that I can highly recommend if you struggle with this. And a lot of this is her information. So she's the one who said, and this is where I get back to healthy perfectionism. I think it's not perfectionism at all. It is the pursuit of excellence. That is as distinguished from perfectionism, which is raw fear. It is fear of getting it wrong. I had that fear. It's the reason I never went after partnership. After 2 years of practicing as an associate in a big law firm, I was terrified of the buck stopping with me, and I never, they called it permanent associate in the day. Now it's counsel or whatever anybody calls it. I have been that for my entire career. I'm not sorry. I've had a great life. I've had a lot of, I've done different things. I've had more time to travel and do other things than some folks who were on partnership track and were partners. But nevertheless, I didn't give myself a choice, not a real choice. I was afraid. And that's where it talks about recognize the toll that perfectionism takes on your performance. It's not in the plus column, like a lot of people think. It's in the minus column. Burnout, overwork, procrastination. If I can't do it perfectly, I'm just going to shove that to the side because I can't handle it. Stifled creativity. I hate to say it, my own mother, not a lawyer, could have been anything, total perfectionist, and as a result, never tried to do much of anything. Brilliant woman, but such a perfectionist. I know this. We never discussed it. She was terrified of failure. I embrace failure. I tell my clients I'm going to make a mistake. I tell them they're going to make a mistake. Sometimes they'll call me and they'll say, oh, I did this. I said, of course you did. Come on. And, they know me, of course, now. And they're like, oh, thank you. Okay, right. I said, was this earth shattering? No. So, in fact, and I'll say this a little bit later, I made what I thought was a big mistake one time. Only once have I made one that I thought was big. And I called the client. It covered more than one client within a client, more than one group within a client. And I called everybody and I, threw myself on my sword and to a person literally said to me, did anybody die? No. Okay, we'll fix it. I mean, it was amazing. But I will talk about that later because that's the grace you get from forming relationships. So just sort of drag that back into here. How do you overcome perfectionism? Well, I've given you what I do now as a tactic, but the answer, and boy, there are some people that are going to want to shut their computers down when I say this, is compassion. And it's just like what I just said for myself and for my client. Am I going to make a mistake? Sure am. Am I going to beat myself up for it? Nope. Why? I have compassion for myself. It's okay. I could beat myself up with the best of them for decades of my life. I don't do that anymore. And it's because I have cultivated compassion for myself. It took a long time. It was work. It didn't come naturally, but I have gotten pretty good at it. The person that I have met virtually who does this kind of coaching is Jordana Confino. I've spoken to her many times. I'm trying to get her to come speak to the entire State Bar of Georgia. She's amazing. And I do have to tell you, I've gotten feedback from a couple of these webinars that I've done, and she has told me that 5 or 6 people have come to her based on this webinar. So clearly, this issue hits home with some folks. If it does for you, do not hesitate to reach out to Jordana. I will vouch for her. This is my own thinking about where we are in this moment and where people are in terms of, sure, if I had an hour to do a yoga class or to sit down and meditate or a mindfulness practice or listen to the Calm app for an hour, of course I know that that would ease my stress. Can't always take the hour, right? Can't always take the hour to go for a walk or go for a swim or do any of these things. So this is something that I had thought of, but it's evidence-based. Don't give up the ship just because you can't take an hour. Commit to doing small things. 3 minutes, 3 deep breaths, 1 deep breath. The stress coach that I have is also a breath work coach. And he will say to me that even 1 deep breath, long, deep breath, will relax you, will engage the parasympathetic nervous system a little. It helps. So don't do nothing, double negative. Do something and take a minute, take 5 minutes. And you can hit that link because I ran across that. It is evidence-based that even minimal calming activities are helpful and will help you de-stress. When you get overwhelmed, stop. I do, and have a ritual. I will talk about that in a minute. And as I say, these choices are deeply personal. What works for me does not necessarily work for anybody else. I'm going to throw mine in case it does. Personal prevention plan again. What you need to do is identify the source of the stress. You may think you know what it is. You may think, well, of course, it's the billable hours and the client calling me at all times. But I heard someone say the next sentence, and I thought, bingo, because this is true of me. If it's people pleasing, I can spend every hour of the day trying to reduce my billable hours requirement. It will not address the fundamental issue that I jump like Pavlov's dog when I get the email from the client. That's my work, is to just say, they don't value me just for the fact that I can hit send in 5 minutes. They value my experience, the relationship, the work that I do, the way I think. And I know that, like I said, still working on it. For you, figure out what works for you. I think a lot of offices offer in-house yoga, for example, or they have in-house Peloton classes or whatever they have. If you detest Peloton, don't think about it for 5 seconds. That's not going to work for you. In fact, it's even more stress. Think about what does work for you. There are a number of apps that people use that really are good in terms of convenience. You can set the duration. They don't cost a ton of money. You might derive a lot of relief and even a lot of pleasure. Take a look. I am well aware that people are sitting there saying, okay, this is great, but I'm a stay-at-home mom. I practice out of my house. I've got small children who are in school. One has a learning disability. How do you think I'm supposed to do this? I don't have your answer. I couldn't possibly have your answer. All I can tell you is be creative, snag the moments that you can, breathe, because you have to breathe anyway. Learn how to breathe where it will help de-stress you. But I don't have an answer. And I don't think anyone else does. Be creative and do the best you can in this moment. My personal ritual when I feel overwhelmed, and I was very surprised to find that this is it's actually scientific. There's science behind this. So once I become foggy and confused and I'm looking at the screen and my eyes are crossed and I can't make sense of it no matter what, I stop. I don't care what I'm doing. I stop. I know that at that point, I'm no longer effective at my job and I shouldn't type anything because whatever I did, it would be wrong. What I do is I make a to-do list in order of priority. What's the big task, all the way down. But whatever I was doing before, I ignore it. And instead, I take the easiest thing on the list, something I can do blindfolded, and I do it. And that begins to restore, my faith in myself, and it begins to calm me down. And if at all possible, I wait until the next day or at least a few hours to do the thing that sent me into orbit. And I will tell you 100 out of 100 times when I open it, whenever I do, and look at it, I know how to do this. Like, what was my problem? My problem was I was in fight or flight mode and I couldn't do it then, but now I'm not, and I've calmed down and it's all good. I have talked about being smart about self-care, being smart, for example, about how you ask for help. Here's a little bit more on that. I got some of this from in-house counsel because I didn't realize, I guess I'm, sort of behind the curve in knowing this. It used to be that going in-house was when you wanted an easier job, basically 9 to 5, go home. It is so not that anymore. They all tell me it's like drinking from a fire hose. And they do have 1,000 emails in their inbox, and here's what they do. They scan them. They don't even answer the ones they don't have to, ever. If it becomes important, somebody will email them back. They will triage. They will assess and prioritize the risk. How could this impact my organization if I don't deal with it? They look at the subject line, maybe a line. If it could hurt the organization, boom, they're going to open it. If not, on to the next thing. And it occurred to me that I also do this in risk management for myself. I am always aware of who or to whom I am sending an email. If it's the partner in charge of my healthcare group that I've worked with for years and has my back, I don't necessarily scrutinize it 8 times. I'll look at it, I'll take a good glance. Yeah, that's probably what I wanted to say. If I miss something, or she has a question, she'll email me back, no problem. If it's to a difficult client, I'm looking at that thing 12 times and making sure that I got it right, because I will not knowingly send an email that I haven't scrutinized to someone who can hurt me or hurt my career. That's how I look at it. There is also something I learned in a past position in-house in Virginia. Draft emails that sell you to the recipient. Don't draft an email with long paragraphs to a client who thinks and talks in bullet points. Send them bullet points, short and sweet. I know you've got a lot to say. Figure out another way to say it, because they are not going to read all those paragraphs, and they're going to love you if you send them a few short bullet points. And then we get to what I spoke about before, build relationships. It all comes down to relationships. Only then will you get grace for your mistakes like I did that time, where the client actually comforted me, which was pretty shocking. It is the key to creating peace within your practice. I'm not the only one who says that. I host a podcast for the Georgia Bar, and I interviewed a younger lawyer who does a lot of trial work, and that was his statement, is he builds relationships, and that is the key to creating peace within his practice. And I borrowed that because it's true for me too. Okay, addressing stress in others. This is going to be quick. Listening to listen and understand, not to what I call reload. I heard that, lawyers listen to reload. You're 4 steps ahead. They're going to say this, I'm going to say that. They're going to say this, I'm going to say that. That's not how you listen to someone who's trying to tell you about their struggles or who is stressed out. You listen to understand. And I have a few notes about how to listen effectively. Don't listen so that you can respond and fix it. That's not what they're looking for. They want to be heard. So be quiet and listen. But the other thing is very personal. I've had it happen where, I've had some pretty dire things happen, and I'll come up with a statement. Well, when I was inpatient and somebody flinches, game over. Game over. I'm not saying another word. I'll end that conversation, go somewhere else if I'm needing somebody to talk to. The only way you can retrieve it, in my experience, if you flinch, is to address it directly. I know I just startled a little bit. I just sort of wasn't ready, but now I've got my listening cap on. I really want to hear everything you've got to say. I'm here for you. I would have spoken. I would have come back to somebody like that. But barring that, absolutely not. Don't make it about you. I listened to more conversations when people during COVID were trying to describe deep experiences they were having, and somebody would chime in and say, "Oh, I know, that happened to me," and launch off onto something and completely take from the person the healing they were getting from having the audience. Just don't do that. But I have also been told, don't say never to that, because occasionally someone opens the door and they actually want to hear your experience. And if you sense that, or if you're invited in, then tell your experience, but don't overshare and don't burden that person. They're burdened enough. Okay, addressing our stress in ourselves and others. So this is out of the box. I'm throwing it out there. I personally have seen such support in a private, moderated Facebook group. Any number of people, attorneys, doesn't have to be your firm or group. Anyone could start this. Make it private. You've got your people who support you. You can, I've seen people where someone was always online at 2 a.m. and somebody would post in the group and there was somebody there for them. If you want to create that or feel that you could and want it, it's a great idea. Similar ideas, conversation circles. It's basically the same idea, just not necessarily on Facebook. Often what I find happens is I give a talk like this in person, and everybody's asking questions and everybody's all excited, and there's unity and there's community, and they're dropped because there's no attempt made to follow that up. So I think that there should be scheduled a follow-up for people who want to do that. Just my thinking. Why do these work? Community. 100% community. I can tell you that when I went into Shepherd Pratt after 8 months where you could wipe the floor with me, I had nothing left. The first night I went in, a bunch of people were playing poker. Well, they wouldn't let you have money, but we played with sugar packets. So Splenda was $1. The blue one, whatever that is equal, was $5, and Sweet and Low was 10 or something. It was the first time in months that I felt remotely okay because I was with a community. It was community. I can't overstate the value of community. Lawyer assistance programs. So I talked about that briefly. I want you to know that your state, wherever you are, has one. They're listed by state on the ABA's website. So take a look at that link. They have all the resources on there. I did put a note that EAPs and LAPs presently are pretty overloaded. I've heard that anecdotally. You can sometimes wait a month. You can wait longer to get a therapist or a counselor. Many states have peer volunteer programs, exactly what that sounds like, peer-to-peer, that can help. And there's some online peer programs that I'll tell you about. I don't know why I have New York in here. I'm in Georgia, but at any rate, this is a slide about what New York has. So if you're from New York, take a look at that. They have 4 no-cost sessions. We have 6 in Georgia per issue per calendar year. So, check into what you've got. Peer volunteer programs, like I said, So North Carolina, this is what they say about theirs. It is simply, and that's if you have ever been in 12-step, sharing experience, strength, and hope is a 12-step approach. And that is simply, I've walked the walk, talk to me, I can help you because I've been where you are now. Georgia has the only online matching program. We've worked very hard to put it together. If by chance there's anybody listening to this who has interest in implementing that in their state, give me a call. We'd be happy to share the wealth on that. Again, New York. So if you're from New York, have a look. Other resources, BetterHelp is an app. All I hear is excellent reports on that. To me, from what I've heard, that's the gold standard. They also have a great list of resources, but I'm saying the app itself, which connects people with therapists and offers a whole bunch of wonderful tools, is supposed to be really, really good. You know, I've talked a lot about large, medium-sized firms, corporations, haven't said anything about small firms or solos. That because it's not my experience, but it's not like I'm not aware of the stresses that those practitioners can be under. And the best thing I've heard for those folks is an accountability buddy. It's somebody, if you're solo, obviously, outside of your practice, a small firm may still be outside of your firm, who you check in with and who will tell you if you're going off track. If you're going off the rails, they will hold you accountable and say, you need to go get some help or you need to take some time or whatever it is. But I thought it was a really, really good idea. Community support, 12 Steps, an example. There are a million community support programs. Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, I happen to know, is very good. The Lawyer Depression Project is an online peer support program out of New York. Online, it doesn't matter where you are, but it happens to be out of New York. It is not about depression. I think they're working on changing their name. It started with that name. Everything, anxiety, bipolar, depression, stress, everything is under their umbrella. They do a wonderful job. They have support groups, they have meetings, virtual, and I think their website is Knowtime, KNOWTIME.com. But if you click on the link, you'll figure out how to get in touch with them. I've listed some apps that I've heard of. Should have included BetterHelp, but I've got it up top. Clubhouse, you have to be judicious. I've gone to some meetings at Clubhouse or some groups at Clubhouse that were great. There are some that are not good at all. You just have to pick and choose. Dinner Party was something someone told me about that is specifically for families struggling with suicide, loss, or grief. It's supposed to be very good. I never talked about this before, but I have tremendous experience with medication. I was on meds for 26 years, I think. Really thought there was going to be a magic bullet. So I was on 2 meds, 3 meds, 4 meds, at a time. Never did help, sometimes hurt, because that was not my issue. I did not have a chemical imbalance, although I fully believe that some people do. I will say that everyone I've talked to who is a professional in the area, I did go looking for an article, didn't see a lot of literature about it, but says that meds alone are not what they prefer. It's meds and talk therapy together is what they look for recovery. I'm just throwing it out there because I wanted to mention it because I know many people use psych meds. I think one thing to know that people don't talk about up front, and you should ask, is what are the withdrawal symptoms if you're to go off of this? Because I've been on psych meds that withdrawal was somewhat like going off of heroin, and I had to titrate down over 6 months, and I was at the end cutting powder and still needed to be doing that because it was still withdrawal. So I would ask that question, even if it's not raised by your psychiatrist who is prescribing the meds. Look at leadership. Well, this is a bottom-up, top-down issue to me. in law firms or corporations or anywhere. It's got to come from the top. People who are stressed is what I talk about, the community of folks. That's coming bottom up. But if leadership doesn't buy into this, you're going to have a tough time getting traction where you are. And I've seen cases where leadership buys into it in name only, and that's not very helpful either. First thing, create a safe environment for somebody to come forward without fear of penalty. For example, making partner. I've heard that over and over and over. I'm up for partner this year. I don't dare tell people that I'm having panic attacks and, or I'm depressed and it's hard to get out of bed because I won't make partner. I don't have an answer for that. I would hope that more and more we're opening up that dialogue with management and with the leadership, and that they will make this a safe space. Leaders should be modeling this. They should be hosting speakers for lunch. I have a couple of leaders in the space. I have quotes. U.S. Bank is a real leader in the space. Lori Pines, Chief Wellness Officer and litigator, by the way, at Wild Gottschall, is enormous in the space, very powerful in the wellness movement, as are many, many, many people. There is a big wellness movement, but we're still dragging some folks along, and we've got a long way to go. And of course, they can sign the ABA Wellbeing Pledge, which you may never have heard about, but which I will talk about. Just going to mention some institutional best practices, and you can look at some of them. They're sort of obvious. The one I really want to highlight is make sure you've got a defined back to work policy after a mental health or rehab leave. Don't throw that person back into the deep end. I can tell you that it's like being in a cocoon. I had a car wreck 2 days after I came out of Shepherd Pratt. Not bad, but I just rolled up, behind somebody at a light because I forgot to put the brakes on. I had been in such a cocoon. I have heard people say that a partner in their firm, for example, wanted to be thrown back in because they were worried other people were going to take their clients. They were worried, about, getting right back in. Don't let somebody do that. Assure them that their clients will be their clients. People need a ramp up period, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion. So for what it's worth, I hope that you can implement that kind of thing. ABA has a lot of good information. The Wellbeing Pledge, I have a link to. I'm going to show you the Wellbeing Pledge in a minute, and this is it. So Patrick Krill, whom I mentioned in connection with the study published in 2016 about lawyer, stress and suicidal ideation and anxiety and stress and all, he is the father of the ABA Wellbeing Pledge, along with others, but it's really his baby. And this is something that's been signed by a number of firms, law firms, corporations, all kinds of folks, as a framework to sort of hang your hat on. We never had this before. It was always, we should help people be well, but what does that mean? This is what it means. Two things I just want to point out that are interesting. The two most difficult points for firms to actually fulfill here are number two, disrupting the status quo of drinking-based events. I didn't know, but we're still a real drinking culture. And it's number, wherever it is, about defined back to work policy. I think it's 5. That's very, very hard for folks to get their arms around. I think there's a sample of such policy on the ABA website, or maybe on the IWIL site, which is the Institute for Wellbeing and Law. Take a look at it. It's out there for you. All their information and resources are free for you. They're tremendous resources. Please take a look. And thank you.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did enjoy it, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more law practice and legal marketing videos. See you in our next clip.